Welcome to another edition of the We Are Pod, your weekly dose of inspiration, fun, insights, and education about life as a female and quite often a male in our amazing industry. As ever, huge thanks to our fantastic sponsors, Digital Sparks, who are an amazing content creator for so many agents and suppliers across the industry. And of course, they are brilliant producers of our pod every single week. So welcome to this week's dose of the WIA Pod. Well, we got a good one this week. I am super excited to be chatting to this phenomenal, and I do not use this word lightly, this phenomenal woman. You will have seen her if you attended our conference this year. She spoke on stage. She is also fresh off the stage from her and her team's incredible scoop at the ESTAs last week. Please welcome my amazing guest this week, the incredible Anne Deckers.
Oh, thank you.
Quite a build-up, hey? I'm going to get comfortable for this one, Anne.
When I grow up, I want to be like you. So when you tell me these things, Verona, my heart is thumping here. But thank you so much for the invite. You know, Women in the State Agency is very dear to my heart.
I do.
And you guys have definitely given me a point of growth in the last year, 100%.
And your growth story is right through your entire journey. But I'm going to start with, for those people, our listeners who weren't able to attend our conference this year and maybe don't know a little bit about Anne, just tell us, why were you such amazing winners at the Oscars, or the ESTAs? I keep calling it the Oscars.
Well, I do think...
It is the Oscars of the industry, right?
I do think of the ESTAs as the Oscars of the industry. That's how I describe it whenever people ask us, why have you got so many? And in reality, it all comes down to a fantastic team.
At base.
So yes. Let me tell you, I am from Base Property Specialist. We are a small independent boutique agency in Shoreditch. We never had any intent of being a big corporate. There's always a place for those, but for us, it was always about the connection with the clients. And I believe that is the basis of the success. It is that connection that we make with people. So we're 21 years into our run with Base, about 15 years that we have attended the ESTAs. And as I said at the conference in March, we're going to need a bigger boat or a bigger cupboard for all the
I've seen your cupboard of awards. It's pretty phenomenal.
And this year was an amazing year, and it hit a bit harder this year. I think everybody in the industry, the last couple of months, even a year, you know, it's been tough. You know, we're not going to lie. There's a lot of change.
Very challenging.
Very challenging. There's just this kind of feel in the world at the moment as well, a lot of insecurity. And so it meant even more. And we were very blessed to have scooped up both gold for landlords and tenants for London. And then the cherry on the cake. And look, when we get London, that is what matters. We're a London-based agency. You know, you only find us in Shoreditch. But to win, to become the gold best agent for lettings, for landlords for the UK was phenomenal. It was our second time, so we did it in 2016 as well, but it's taken us, you know, all those years to come back. To reclaim it. We have this kind of little rivalry with Infinity, and they were absolutely overjoyed for us as well. So
they're also a fantastic team. I actually spoke to them for the first time, and they always come to the ESTAs suited, booted, looking incredible. What a team. But well done to you and all the team at Base.
Thank you.
That is such a beautiful way to start this conversation, Anne. But success and award-winning and that level of joy has not necessarily been a thread throughout your life. This is going to be quite a different conversation than normal because I'm not going to ask a lot of questions, Anne, because I just need to start you off on the story because I know and I've heard you tell the story before, and it is an unbelievable story in many, many ways. So take us right back to the start, and where you're originally from, Belgium.
I am
So
originally.
take us back to right to the very start of your story.
So indeed, I come from Belgium, from Antwerp. And growing up, I always had in the back of my mind that that was not the place I wanted to be as an adult. I didn't, feel comfortable there for very many reasons. It wasn't a very happy start, not the happiest of starts. But I always knew that I wanted something different. At 17, I absolutely fell in love with England. It was on a school trip that I came to London the first time and absolutely adored it.
It's hard not to fall in love with
At
London,
that time,
right?
exactly, at that time, standing on Tower Bridge, I said, I want to live here. Now, be careful what you wish for, because you might get it, but also how you're going to get it can be challenging because, coming from my background, that wasn't really realistic that I would end up in a city like London. But to kind of escape my kind of childhood and everything around that, I ended up falling in love, or so I thought, with a gentleman who was quite a bit older than me. And
So tell us your age and
so at the
his age.
time I was 17, 18, and he was 33 years older than me.
So almost twice your age.
Absolutely. I had known him for many, many years before. Nothing untoward had happened as a teenager. That's not part of the story with him there. But when I met him when I was in my first year of university, we very quickly connected, and he made me believe that I could achieve anything in the world and that he wanted to help me and that he was absolutely infatuated with me, and he asked me to marry him.
And those are things that most women want to hear, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So who would not be flattered and impressed by that?
Yeah, absolutely. I came from a background as well where, nothing was ever good enough. I wasn't clever, I wasn't pretty, all of those things. You were being put down all the time. And then for someone to kind of big you up, these were like music in my ears, really. And I fell for the story. I fell for the feelings. And indeed, when I was 18 and a half, I eloped. We ran off and we got married. And I believed the whole fairy tale that he had presented me with. So he was a successful diamond dealer. I had no reason not to believe him because of the past history I knew of him. So there wasn't anything that told me that he was anything else, but a very successful entrepreneur who had different businesses. It very quickly became clear, though, that we were always packing our bags and moving on to the next destination. And we could never tell anybody where we were. We could never leave any address behind. So after a while, I started obviously thinking, hold on, this is not the entire story.
Was that exciting for you to be moving around at that time?
Of course, at my age,
Okay.
I mean, I hadn't really traveled as a teenager. That wasn't really part of my life. So to travel the world and travel the world in style was absolutely amazing. He also helped me with my education. So I went back to what we call the Hogeschool for Diamond in Antwerp, which is like a college where you learn how to do diamond grading and all of that. I worked within his company, I was building a little career for myself there. And then one day from the next, we suddenly had to pack up and leave. And at that time, he had to start telling me little bits. So it turned out that he was actually on the run. He was part of a massive big ring who was doing money laundering for the proceeds of the sale of marijuana. But we're talking major scale, like not a little dealer on the corner. This was like international.
So was the diamond dealing a front for the marijuana?
It was a front. It was in order to be able to have
Be legitimate.
means. Exactly. And obviously, we have to also place this in the time. So this is early 90s. In Antwerp, the diamond industry at that time was pretty much let to do whatever they wanted to do. There was plenty of black money, so to speak, that was going through the books there. And so nobody ever really blinked an eye, but it was a perfect front, of course. Also, I ended up being the perfect front for him because, you know, at this time, by the time these things are starting to happen, I'm early 20s. Who would believe that a girl of my age in a jeans would have a bag full of diamonds or anything that needed to be moved between countries? Nobody. Yeah. And like you said, I'm not going to lie, it was exciting.
Yeah.
You know, it was something completely different. I was living out my wildest dreams.
Were you in love with him?
I was completely and utterly. Now, what I will say is that you can make yourself believe anything you want.
Yeah.
And for me, he was the escape. It was literally jumping from the frying pan into the fire. And, you know, I thought I was getting away from something that wasn't great to something that was so much better. And it was actually a lot worse.
Yeah.
But I had burned my bridges, right? I had eloped, I had literally run away, I had sent my parents a letter, I'm not coming home. I cut off every contact with my family and my friends. And by then, you know, whatever he told me to do, I did.
Yeah.
Because I also couldn't see a way back.
Yeah, you chose in your path at that point.
Exactly. And then as I was growing up in this situation, I started to become more vocal to him because in the beginning I was just a little girl and I didn't dare to say anything. But as things were happening, you know, you start to find your backbone, you start to realize, hold on, this isn't right. So I started pushing back. When he would say something, I would ask him to tell me the truth and not the story that he thought I needed to hear. This only came really after, though, when I was confronted by being arrested. So I knew that there were things that were untoward, but I did not know the scope of everything until one day I got an invite from the police in Antwerp to come in for an interrogation. Now, at this time, we had just closed the office in Antwerp. It had been confiscated by the police. Fuad had made me believe that this was all to do with a civil case whereby he hadn't paid off a loan in Dubai and they were coming to confiscate goods. And I knew from my colleagues in the office that they had been invited as well. So I had no reason to doubt what he had actually said. So I went.
So they were part of the setup as well. They were lying on his behalf as well.
They were all well,
so they were invited.
They were.
Oh, they were as well.
They were.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So the people that were working in the office, for them, this was their day job. Like they were not part of what he was doing behind the scenes. So again, that's why I had no reason not to believe.
Yeah.
He had an office in one of the biggest diamond centers in Antwerp. And I mean, I'm talking a big office. So it's not,
everything appeared kosher.
It looked absolutely 100% legal. So I left London. I went to Antwerp and I went to the police station thinking it would just simply be a little interview of like 10, 15 minutes asking what my role was within the company. It very quickly became clear that that was definitely not the case. And so I didn't walk out of that police station for the next 3 days.
Wow.
Like they kept me there, they kept me in a cell, they kept interrogating me, they wanted to know where he was. They made it very clear that I was in over my head, that they would make my life an utter misery, that I would be locked up. Now at this time, although I had an inkling why we were moving, I did not realize how big the scope was. So to protect myself, and you've got to think, this is 1995. I'm 23 years old by this time. I have never been in touch with the police.
Yeah.
I've never seen the inside of a police station. I've never even
Why
had a
would you be?
ticket. Exactly. I never even had a ticket. And I lied. You know, I panicked and I said I didn't know where he was. I basically said, at this precise moment, I don't know where he is. Yes, I had a relationship with him. The staff in the office knew that, but we are no longer together.
Right.
In hindsight, everybody's brilliant. And as an adult now, I look back at that kid and I have to forgive her. I have
Absolutely,
to like
yeah.
say, fine, you made your decision there. It obviously didn't help me.
Right.
Because that would become the start of a 10-year journey that took 10 years from that moment to clear my name in 2006, to walk away, because that was only just the start. So they kept me for a while. They then secured my passport. I wasn't allowed to leave Belgium, and I had to stay there for 6 months. I had to go into the police station twice a week. I would be interrogated continuously. They searched my apartment. They searched my parents' house.
Did you reconnect with your parents at this point?
So by this time, I had reconnected with my parents. But it, you know, it was very difficult,
Yeah,
of
of course.
course,
Yeah.
because I'm now bringing something like this to their door. I mean, first of all, they had to come to terms with the fact that I had eloped with a man who was older than they were. And then that I was bringing this to their house. I mean, they got all their life savings confiscated. Like Belgium in the 90s was very different to what it is now. It was very much a police state.
Right.
My brother got in. I mean, he's a kid. He's 5 years younger than me. So he was, you know, very, very young. He got hauled into the police station to be interrogated, what he knew about his sister. So it had a big impact on the entire family. But I was still there, looking after myself. Obviously, staying in touch with Fuad. Even though I was lying to the police that I had nothing to do with him, I now had to prove to myself that I could build a life. So I had to go and find myself a job. I had to work because all my story to the police was that I was not with Fuad. So I had to prove that I could make a living. And at that time, I ended up cleaning at night in the docks, in like a chemical factory, you know, because that was the only job I could get because I had no qualifications. I had no university degree, nothing.
Isn't it incredible, Anne, that whenever we are faced with no option, we find a way?
Oh, you find a way.
When you're resilient enough,
I mean, looking back at it now, it's ridiculous because I would do that to make the little bit of money, but I would drive the biggest car you could imagine to this place to go and do the cleaning job. And, you know, when I think of that part of my life now, it's almost like it happened to somebody else.
Yeah.
It did make me who I am today.
For sure.
And so a lot of those things that I went through, and look, there were a lot of tears and there was a lot of fear and worry, but it has helped me over the years because nothing can really ever be as bad
Absolutely.
as it was then.
Yeah. So how did you, the 6 months that you had to stay in Antwerp, what was the stage where the police acknowledged that maybe you were not part of?
Oh, they never did.
They didn't.
They never did. They just couldn't prove it.
Okay.
Because I stuck to my story and there was no one else who could give them any other story. Now, look, in reality, this has never been confirmed, but afterwards I obviously ended up with an amazing, amazing lawyer who helped me out. When we talked about that part of my life, he was in agreement with how I read that story there, or what was actually happening was I was just basically a pawn in the whole game because at that time, Belgium and Holland were working together to get Fuad back to Holland to become a supergrass.
Right.
As in, in the end, he was the one who went and spoke to the Dutch authorities. And in exchange for his story, he was so-called free to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't going to face any consequences, but he had to appear in court because he had to be made. He was the one who was going to put them all in jail, basically.
So he got immunity
He got full immunity.
Yeah.
Well, at least that is what we believed.
Okay.
Now, the way we saw it was that they kept me in to put pressure on him to make sure that he wouldn't do another
Yes.
midnight escape, because that had happened before. They'd always come to a certain stage and then he got cold feet because he kept saying, they're dangerous people, I can't do this. Is it because I was there now, kept inside, and he felt that, well, I've got to do something? I don't know, because later on, when I then go through everything that happened, when he had the chance to say, she's got nothing to do with this, he never did.
Wow.
Now, I would never have known about that, apart from the fact that when I had to investigate, well, when I had to start fighting for my own freedom, I ended up being my own legal secretary, my own investigator. The Mr. Weifels, who was my lawyer, he came out of retirement for me. He was extremely well known in Antwerp, in Belgium. And everybody basically said to him, do not touch this case, you are crazy. And he believed me. He said, no, I know that lady. It was actually thanks to my grandma, as I said.
Amazing.
At the conference. It was my grandma who basically, when she realized that I was stuck in England, I could not return back anywhere, I was hiding, she basically said, you have to get a lawyer in Antwerp. And she went to him and begged him, please take the case. And so he basically came to see me in London. We sat down, I told him the whole story. And he promised he would help me. He would come out of retirement, he would return to the bar, but he would not hire any staff. And so it was the first time that I was taught the lesson that knowledge is power, right? That as long as you know the ins and outs, no matter what's thrown at you, you'll have a solid base. And we worked together.
He asked you, from what I can remember, that you would have to be his staff. You'd have to do all the research. You'd have to put the file together, bring all the evidence, and you learned so much over that time about both about the facts of the case and about the facts of what happened, but also about your own ability and your own strength during that time.
Exactly, yeah. And he was a strong taskmaster. He didn't suffer fools gladly. But he was an amazing man, and he really, really fought. I mean, from that first conversation with him, which was in 2000, so you've got to kind of think, 95, I get arrested, then I stay 6 months in Belgium. The beginning of 96, I came back to England, so they had to give me my passport back. And my mother quite clearly said, look, you have two options. You can either stay here in Belgium and you'll have to start a new life, or you can go back to him, but the choice is yours, and you know what I tell you to do. I never listened to my parents anyway, so I did go back. But obviously the moment that I got back on that plane, that was it. So since that beginning of 96, I never returned back to Belgium until 2002.
Right.
So I had 6 years there that I was, you know, here in the UK with no passport.
And were you back with him?
So I went straight back to him. I walked into that door and I said, and now you're going to tell me the full truth, because I have heard an awful lot about things you have never talked to me about. So he then told me a version of the truth. And again, you know, all of us have a version, right? There is what I think happened, what he thinks happened, and then
the
what
truth is
really
somewhere in the
happened.
middle. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So that next kind of year, we had a pretty happy year, because it finally felt like I was getting into who I was. I was becoming Anne.
And there was some level of disclosure from him, which I guess rebuilt the trust to an extent. But of course, it didn't end there.
It didn't end there. So April 97, we get a knock on the door, and it's Scotland Yard, you know. with the police from Belgium, walking into the door, coming to arrest him. So again, I tried to protect him. I didn't know where he was. I mean, obviously, they had been following us. They knew everything that was happening. And they arrested him and they took him off. And then there I was, again, with nobody, because we didn't have any family here in the UK. We didn't have any friends. It was just the two of us ever. Actually, at that time, my brother and his now wife, but then girlfriend, were with me at that time. So for them, that was an enormous shock. Sure. So I had to get them back on the train and back home to Belgium. And then, I suddenly was told, you must disappear, because they will do the same trick as what happened in Antwerp. They will come and arrest you and then they'll have a pawn. So
cycle.
I packed up a bag and I disappeared. I went from Belgravia, where I had a beautiful apartment and had a beautiful life, and I ended up on the Isle of Dogs on a mattress, somewhere on a council estate.
Leveling.
But
what I know now, Anne, is that was probably the best thing that's ever happened to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. You can only start building a new life when you hit rock bottom. And that was, that was proper rock bottom, because I did try so hard to help him. I gave everything back. I gave jewelry back, I gave car back, I gave the money back. Like, to me, that was not important. I was still so invested in that love story of we will have a happy ever after. Yeah. I truly believed that. He didn't. So I was his second wife, first of all. He had a first wife with children. And so they came back in the picture then. And they're the one that had the money. And it was the money that he needed to get himself a better lawyer and back on track. Eventually it took nearly a year for him to be in prison in Brixton here before he came out, and he never came back. Now, during that year, obviously, I didn't just stay in my bedroom in the Isle of Dogs. I had to have some kind of life. I would have gone crazy if I locked myself away. And I was very fortunate. And I think it's something that I have seen as a thread throughout my life, is that I've always been very blessed with the people that I have met. Yes, I've had bad experiences, but once I hit that rock bottom and I was then kind of going, no, I need to get back up, and I was open to meeting new people, there was no judgment. I wasn't judgy of anybody. And suddenly I was meeting all different walks, but people who might not have had anything, but they shared their home. They made me feel welcome. They made me part of their family. And they believed in me. They got to know the real Anne. They didn't think of the headlines that were going back in Belgium. They didn't, worry about that. They got to know me.
Can I ask a question around that time? Because, even the sequence of events that brought you to that period are, like I say, it's like a story. It's a book. It's almost unbelievable. And then you find yourself in a bedsit in the Isle of Dogs, which, no disrespect to the Isle of Dogs, it's not the most beautiful place in the world, and where you've been before, it's significantly less glamorous. You have to start again. You're at rock bottom. How do you even start to do that when you're at that point? What was it within you that enabled you to pick yourself back up, to go out and meet new people, and to do that in a way that people responded to you with kindness and with grace? You have to give that first. Where did that come from, your ability to do that?
Because I had been treated so bad. Like, when I look back at that, I was so badly hurt. I didn't ever want anyone else to feel like that. So wherever I go, I will always meet people with kindness, because it doesn't matter where they come from. Same like I now have on my business card, I have no title. I could be the cleaning lady for the company. It doesn't matter.
It's irrelevant.
It's irrelevant. I was in a way also excited.
A fresh start.
It was a complete fresh start.
Yeah, I get that.
You know, when I ran away from Belgium, there was a lot of baggage there. Then I had the whole history with Foire. That was even a bigger baggage. And so to be able to put that all down and to just go and meet people and be curious. And look, I got very curious and I got very wild, but I could because I ended up in London.
I think you deserved it, frankly. I think you deserved that wild phase. So another question, Anne, around that time is, clearly you were married to a man. Yeah. At what point did you acknowledge, recognise, admit that you were gay? What point did that happen in the journey?
It all, again, was part of that finding of myself. One night we ended up going to a club with the girls from the Isle of Dogs. We didn't have a lot of money, so we would go to a little club in the East End because it was only a £5 to get in. And it was a cross-dressers night. And we loved going there because we weren't being hit on by men. We could do whatever we wanted. We had an amazing time. And every 2 weeks we would go back. And so it brought in a very diverse crowd. And it is where I met my first girlfriend, Lisa. And I ended up dancing with her, and she basically said to me, "Shame you're not gay." And I said, "Well, how do I know? I have never tried it. I have absolutely no idea." So again, because I was so open to absolutely everything. And funny enough, the first time I saw Fuad when he came back out of prison, that first time when he was arrested in Brixton, and we finally had our chat and he admitted that he was going back to his family and that there was no going back for us. He at the time actually said, "I would not be surprised if you end up with a woman." And at that time it was like, how does he even know that I have kissed a woman? Like,
it was almost like it's written all over your face.
Yes. And so, yeah, for me, it was a case of a bit like my mum said when I came out to her. She says, "Oh, well, you've had bad luck with men. I hope you have better luck with women."
I mean, it couldn't get much worse.
But no, I always have believed of myself that whoever I met, whether it was a woman or a man, for me, it's always been about the person. It's the personality. And yeah, that's how I've lived my life.
So on that point, I also know that you've recently celebrated your wedding, but that's after a very long relationship. So tell me a little bit about how you met your incredible wife, who I know has also been phenomenal and instrumental in, I guess, your recovery from that horrendous period of your life. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the fact that she never ran a mile, as I said in my wedding speech, when I told her literally the first month of us getting together that I, had Interpol after me, like, she didn't run away. I knew she was a keeper, and that is 26 years ago by now.
Amazing.
So I met Diana again through the property industry. So obviously I never thought I would end up in the property industry. It wasn't something that I yearned for when I was a teenager or anything. The only reason I ever became a letting agent was because, having been married to a wealthy man and having had that lifestyle, I had a car. And when I had to start building my life again, I couldn't afford one, and I really, really missed my car. So I thought, if I get into property, they're gonna have to give me a car. Until today, it's still about the car, Verona.
And you wanted a red car as well, right?
Absolutely.
I remember that. You wanted a red car.
Yeah.
Did you get the red car?
No.
No.
And I've never had a red car, actually.
But
never
you got
had
the
a red
career.
Car. But I got the
You
career.
got the career.
I got the red hair.
Yes.
Let's do it that way. But no, so it was my first property agency that I worked for, which was in Southgate. I had been there for 6 months because what I quite quickly did in the beginning, I climbed the ladder. So I would be there for 6 months or a year, and then I'd get a next offer and I would move on. So it was my very first job. 6 months in, I was offered a much better opportunity and I left. But I really had made a connection because, again, this is very early on in the stage where I'm rebuilding my life. I'm getting to meet new people. You know, I realize that I'm actually quite good at being a negotiator, and I love property and I love the freedom with the negotiating. So the fact that I had made all these friends, every Friday night I would go back to Southgate because we would go drinking with the guys there. Now I was the only female negotiator, it was all men. And but our manager was a female manager, Dawn. And Diana had gone and worked as an administrator there. And so on the Friday, Dawn had said to Diana, tonight we're all going to the pub. And Diana, who at the time was a divorced mum with 3 children, who went home and it was all about the kids, basically said, oh, no, I don't do the pub. And Dawn was like, no, you do the pub.
Tonight, you do the pub.
You do the pub. And so, yeah, that's how we met.
Wow.
And it was very intriguing. Like, she hates this story. She made me promise not to put it in our wedding speech. But when I first met her, I was sat next to her and she was very, very comfortable around me, bearing in mind how crazy I was at that time. Like, I was...
discovering.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. The world was opening up for you.
Absolutely. And so I had come out only recently to my colleagues, which, you know, you got to think this is late 90s as well. So very different situation, environment. But they were all very welcoming. And I was joking with the boys, like they were bragging as boys do of, oh, when I go out, I'll pick up anyone, this and that. And I joked back and I said, well, you won't have
You're in competition with me.
You won't have 100% strike rate because I'll go either way.
Yeah, brilliant.
And so we had that conversation. And so I went round the table, you might, you not, you maybe. And then I got to Diana and I said, oh, I think you might. And Dawn's like, but she's married, she's been married, she's got 3 kids. No. And then, this was probably about the June, July time. And by September we were dating. So, yes. But she has been such an instrumental part in, she believes in me. She always has done. And people ask me, because again, there is a big age gap between me and Diana, because obviously she's got 3 grown-up kids. What was it about her?
Yeah.
She's great fun.
I've
such
only
a
met
love.
her for a short space of time, but I can see that a mile.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's got a cheeky glint
Yeah.
in her eye, hasn't she? Yeah.
She does. She does. And the best way to describe it, she felt like home. Like,
and you've not really had that.
and
right?
I did not have
something
that.
you were craving.
Yeah, absolutely. And with her, I could be totally myself.
Yeah.
Like, good, bad, didn't matter. She was there for it.
And isn't it, that's such a funny thing, because it sounds like such a basic principle of life, but all of us want just to be loved for who we are and accepted for everything who we are, good, bad, and ugly. And to have that after particularly the journey you'd been on must have been pretty, awesome.
Yeah.
We don't have long left, and I literally could talk to you all day, Anne, on this, because I'm so literally inspired and intrigued by the whole story. But I can't end this conversation without talking a little bit about the other significant person in your life, the person who is now your partner in business and a very amazing friend to you, Christian. So tell us a little bit about how you met Christian and just why you gel and work so well together.
Yeah. So we met in the company before we started Base. It was a company called Homes Direct in the Docklands. And to say that it was not love at first sight is an understatement. When I met him, I thought he was an arrogant, I won't swear.
2 big personalities, right?
It was 2 big personalities. At the time, I was the valuation manager, so I would meet new landlords, I would bring in the new business development, and he came in as a young negotiator. We have a 7-year age gap as well, and obviously with everything that I had gone through, and by this time, that company, I think, is like the 3rd or 4th company I've worked my way through to end up there. And at this time also, I am still fighting the whole case. And I will forever be grateful for Christian that he didn't run a mile when he realized that. But I very quickly realized that although he was very flamboyant and a very big character, it's only arrogance if you can't back it up. And he could back it up. Like,
Yeah.
he was and still is phenomenal when it comes to negotiating, to having ideas, to being creative, but also to know exactly what he wants and to be very strong in who he was, something that I, was still finding. And because I was taking on the properties, he very quickly realized she's the woman who's got the key.
Yeah.
So whenever I would come into the office, he would make a beeline for me. He goes like, okay, what have you taken on? So even before I could put it on the system, he would already be calling out and he would say, oh, call your landlord, tell them to sign the terms because I can come tonight with XYZ amount of people. And so very quickly,
you realized you made a
we
good team.
started working very well together. He was also very strong in being a leader for the team, because whenever something went wrong in the office, he would very quickly be the first to go, that's not right, this is what needs to happen. And he would literally tell the boss, like, no way, because there were a lot of things going on behind the scenes that we later found out again that wasn't great.
Yeah.
So after about a year of working together like that, one very drunken night, we started talking about the fact, if we can do this for someone else, why can't we do this for ourselves? And so that's where the seed was planted, and we started thinking about it. And then he very brazenly one day said to me, he said, can I come and see you? I want to have a chat with you. I said, of course, come to my house. So he came and saw me, and he said, I want you to come and work for me. And I was like, no. And he's like, oh, because in his head, he already had the whole company set up. Anne's going to be the valuation manager. She'll be my first member of staff.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, because I have the connections. I have the relationships with all the landlords, because wherever I went, people would always follow me. But if I'm totally honest, I didn't have the balls to do it by myself. But when he came,
you suddenly find them.
I suddenly said, okay, we can do this together. So at first when I said, no, but I will work with you, he said, oh, okay, no. And he left. And it ended up being his then girlfriend, now wife, who spoke some sense into him and said, maybe that is not, maybe that's not such a bad idea. And so that's where it all began.
And not only have you both built a phenomenal business together, you have an incredible friendship, and 21 years later.
21 years for base.
Yeah.
We then also built the Depositary.
That's right.
So that's now 7-8 years in. So that's another very exciting journey. But yeah, me and Christian, we go back about 23 years now. And it's hilarious, because most people who know us, as in know us because of the industry, always assume that we were not just business partners, that we were partners. So the amount of congratulations that Christian and I got when the news was put out that Anne's getting married, people who've known us for years, like, oh, by the way, congrats for you and Chris. And I'm like, well, I'll tell Chris when he's with his wife, but that's not me.
Oh my, that's so funny. I mean, I can kind of see it, because, you're obviously an incredible partnership, but yeah, that's funny. Just as well, both his wife and your wife are understanding of that situation.
Absolutely.
And we are going to have to wrap this, I'm afraid, but I have one final question for you, which is, this chair is all about telling brilliant stories and sharing experiences to help others. Who would you like to see on this chair in the future?
I would love you to talk to Claire Yates. And the reason why I say that, it was Claire who gave me my first thought of, wow, she was a speaker on the
very first
Estate conference. And it was
what a
so
story.
raw and so real, and she was so articulate about it. And it was the first time that I thought,
I can talk about mine.
maybe I could do that. Maybe I could share my story, and it would make other people see, no matter how bad a situation is,
Yeah.
it can get better, and
Yeah.
you can get over it. And she's adorable.
She is. She's phenomenal. And to that point, Anne, you are a living example, incredible proof that no matter what happens to you, you can approach life with kindness and you can inspire other people, because you absolutely have inspired me. So thank you so much for sharing your story. What a story.
Thank you
And
for
I'm just
having
going
me.
to end it there, because what a phenomenal, phenomenal episode. Thank you for joining us. Please share, like, and tell your friends.